If you've had a cryptid encounter you'd like me to share on here, email me at jttosstories@gmail.com. Story 1. I live near a very large, very popular national park. Locals here, like myself, are pretty aware of the goings-on near here. Strange sounds, strange creatures, and strange disappearances. I've dealt with these myself in the past on hikes and even just relaxing in the park. Here's one that still freaks me out to this day. I was at my grandma's house that's deep in the boonies. The only road to there is a gravel road that is pretty much washed away, so without a good car, you're not getting out there anyways. My cousins live in a trailer with their moms right below my grandma's. We played all sorts of games, which mainly involved me getting chased. I was the youngest. My grandma was in the hospital with my aunt, so our older cousin, who we'll name Dee, had to watch us. Dee was, and still is, the only cousin that's older than us that we still hold in high regards. He would mess with us and play around, but actually cared about us. The whole day we spent playing around, but we would usually play more at night, like hide and seek, tag, etc. We had been playing pretty far away from the house, and it was starting to get dark. We decided to go back to the house and grab flashlights and play manhunt. Of course, I was the one being hunted. I ran pretty far into the woods on the other side of the property and hid behind a log. I heard my cousins getting close, so I ran and they saw me. We ended up running to the very back of the property line, almost a mile from the house, and we saw my cousin Dee. He looked at us and kind of growled, and we all ran from him, thinking it was just a game. We ran back onto the gravel road, and we saw him walk out of the tree line, but he did so in a weird, kind of gloatingly way. We ran into the house and decided to barricade the door to play a prank on him. We moved a couple of things in front of the door, but decided to move the big coffee table in front of it too. As we loudly scooted the table across the floor, Dee came into the living room from the master bedroom, rubbing his eyes. We had obviously woken him up from all the movement, and he was mad. We told him about seeing him chase us, and he got wide-eyed. He told us to go to our bedroom and stay there. We sat in the bedroom for about 20 minutes, and he came in and told us not to worry, that it was just him scaring us, and we went on with the night. It wasn't until about 3 years later, when I was 13, that he told me the truth. It was a skinwalker. He told me that he has dealt with it when he was our age, and told me his story, which I may share as well someday, depending on how far this goes. This is just one story. There were a lot more. Story 2. The thing that's been happening is on a pretty notorious road in my town. This road has had multiple murders and ghost sightings on it, and is genuinely creepy at night. Not to mention that there's a horse ranch on it where the owners dropped like flies, and their prize-winning horses mysteriously died later on. My main interaction here lately happened right near this ranch. I was driving home from school, and I take night classes, so it was pretty dark. I drive a beat-up old Taurus that has an issue every other week, but I'm poor, so really any car is good. Anyway, I was driving, and my car started to overheat and started acting up. The hiccuping was so bad, I decided to pull over into the next spot that I could. The road is very curvy, and there's only one straight way, right in front of the ranch. Go figure. I pulled off and called my GF's uncle, who works on cars, and he said that he'd be there in about 30 minutes. No big deal, I thought. I'll wait in the car. However, my car's heat is broken, and it was colder in there than outside, so I decided to wait on the hood of my car. I sat opposite the iron gate that was the entrance to the ranch. The entrance goes out into 2 small fields where they would showcase their horses. The last one to die was a celebrity named Duke. The fields end with a small forest and road going through the main house. Ever since the first horse and human deaths came out, There were rumors that the place was haunted. They were, of course, natural, at least the people's were to some degree. The horses were slaughtered by a bear, but I'm very doubtful that's what actually happened. I never stepped foot near the place, and I wasn't planning on it, frankly. But as I sat down on the hood of my car, browsing Reddit, I heard something in the field. When I shined my flashlight to see what it was, my heart dropped. It was a pale, skinny, dog-like thing, but really it just looked wrong. I freaked out and got in my car, and it seemed to run at me. I got in and looked and didn't see it. Of course, I'm not an idiot, and decided to not get out and look, but instead just sit in my car. I heard a growl somewhere near me and got out. I turned my car in and hightailed it out of there. Of course, I messed up my car in doing so, but as soon as I got out of the woods, I pulled over and waited. It's been about 4 days, and when I drive on that road, I still see a pale shape in the dark, and it fills me with fear. A couple of other things have been happening too. My aunt has taken a sharp turn and gotten very sick, and if my cousins are to be believed, it may be something very evil that did. Story 3. For some background, I live in a very religious place in the South, so people tend to not believe what they see or hear because it's just the devil playing tricks. That being said, Cousin D, who's about 12 years older than me, believes in this too, and that what he saw was a skinwalker and not a demon. Getting this story out of him took a while. He didn't want to talk about it, but I got him to open up a bit. This happened around the mid-90s. D, much like me and my cousins, spent his childhood around my mama's property with his brother C and his cousin K. They would play manhunt and tag, much like we did. When the story took place, it was in the middle of the summer, and he was around 12 years old. He and C and K were playing at a treehouse that is no longer standing. They had just pulled a prank on K and were hiding from him in the treehouse. D and C stayed in the treehouse until K stopped looking. C left and went back into our mama's house and left D alone. D stayed in the treehouse and read some comic books. The treehouse was about half a mile from the house and was on a hill so that you could still see the house from it, but it was in the woods. At the time, my papa was still alive, but was in Georgia on retreat, so he was not there, which let the three boys do pretty much whatever they wanted. Papa would holler for them to come in when it started to get dark, because there were, and still are, a large number of coyotes and bears around the house. Dee decided to read comic books all day, something he still enjoys, and eventually fell asleep. He woke up, and it was dusk. He heard our mama yelling for him, and he began to get ready to leave. As he went down louder, he heard a coyote yip, and he climbed back up. At this point, he began to get a little upset while telling the story. He began to explain what the coyote looked like, and I realized it was the same one that my cousins and I had seen growing up as well. It looked like it had mange. It had a large tuft of fur missing on its right side, and you could see the bare, pale skin, and it had human-like eyes. It snarled at him and bore its teeth. He was taken aback by this, and he just sat back down in the treehouse. The coyote sat at the base of the ladder and just looked up at him. He told me he sat there for about 20 minutes trying to figure out what to do. He remembered that he had a slingshot and decided that the best course of action would be to try to scare it off with that. He said that he shot at it and it just growled more. My cousin was, and still is, a very good shot, and I've got a couple of bruises that prove it. He reared back and decided to aim at its eyes because he didn't like the way it was staring at him. He reared back and got it right in its left eye, and it ran away yowling. Dee got a little more emotional now. He told me that he climbed down the ladder and made a mad dash towards the house. About halfway to the house, there's a large dip in land where there are a bunch of bushes and small trees. He told me that when he got there, he had heard coyote yips all around him, and he swore that a whole pack had surrounded him. He just ran from it, and while he was on his way up to the other side of the dip, he tripped and hurt his leg. At this point, Dee started to get upset and had to stop a few times. He told me he got up and started to limp towards the house. This is the part that gave me chills. He told me that he turned away and looked beside him, saw not a coyote anymore, but a person, and it looked like it had his face. He said it started to walk towards him in an odd way, but luckily C&K started yelling for him, and as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. Dee told C&K, but they didn't believe him, and they told him it was just a trick of the night, something that he still tries to believe in. And as soon as he told me this, he asked me kindly not to ask him about it anymore, so when he thinks about it, he sees that coyote outside. Dee is a very religious and reliable man, so when he says weird stuff is happening, I'm inclined to believe him. The coyote he saw that night, my cousins and I have seen before as well, along with the stag. Since the night my cousins and I saw it, I have had 2 more encounters, the latest one being last year.